Board. The chair will be here in a few minutes, I think.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a busy day ahead of us.
Yeah.
Being efficient with our time. First, I wanted to thank our chair and some of our committee members and staff for their work on the bill. I look forward to continuing to work, of course, with all of you on some of the concerns outlined in the analysis. As we know, solar photovoltaic deployment has fortunately grown at unprecedented rates in our states. However, as the PV panel market increases, so will the volume of decommissioned PV panels. Sectors like PV panel recycling will be essential in the state's transition to a sustainable, economically viable, and increasingly renewable energy future. So this bill, AB 2, will fulfill some of the missing steps towards creating a truly circular solar energy economy by establishing a two-pronged solution to require that all panels sold in California are properly managed at the end of their life and ensuring that no panels end up in landfills. First, this bill expands the Electronic Waste Recycling Act of 2003 to include under the definition of covered electronic waste customer-owned solar PV modules and establishes a covered solar PV recycling fee. This fee will be calculated by CalRecycle based on the reasonable regulatory costs to ensure that there is a plan and financing in place to properly recycle, reuse, or dispose of all PV modules after they are decommissioned. Second, for all panels not covered under the customer-owned definition, such as utility or other large-scale solar installations, the panel owners will be required to submit an end-of-life management plan to CalRecycle. These plans will follow guidelines already set by CalRecycle and will be subject to audits and penalties for noncompliance. California, we lead the nation in renewable energy adoption, and we're uniquely positioned to be a model for the sustainable end-of-life PV panel management. So we must take steps now to ensure that the solar energy remains completely renewable and continues to be California's best energy option. For my witness in support, I have Priscilla Quiroz on behalf of the California Product Stewardship Council and Delaney Hunter on behalf of the Solar Energy Industry Association.
Thank you. First witness.
Good morning. Priscilla Quiroz here on behalf of the California Product Stewardship Council, who is a powerful network of local governments, non-government organizations, businesses, and individuals supporting policies and projects where producers share the responsibility of managing problem products till their end of life. We are the proud now sponsors of AB 2 to ensure that there's an end-of-life management plan for these solar panels. We appreciate the work of Assemblymember Ward and his staff and the committee on this bill, and appreciate where the goal is going towards solar panels that have reached their end of useful life, which are often abandoned, become the obligation of residents or are illegally dumped, both of which are a cost burden to local governments at either household hazard waste facilities or as part of the illegal dumping cleanup efforts. The current average cost for processing and recycling of these old solar panels is estimated to be $20 per panel. For a typical household with 16 panels, that's estimated to be cost $320 by household hazardous waste facilities. Customer-owned solar panels only represent approximately 10 to 15% of the panels out there. And AB 2 provides a needed funding for the collection and recycling of old solar panels that are currently or have been customer-owned. Customer-owned solar panels are those that exist on rooftops wherein the property owner has either financed, purchased, or outright purchased their solar system, including the purchase of property wherein the solar system already exists. Since there is now a visible fee applied to each new panel installed in California under customer-owned requirements, the funds collected would be managed by CalRecycle, and this will help ensure the proper management and the use of the public fund money. We thank the Assembly member for his leadership on this issue, and we hope to continue the conversation with the solar industry. And on behalf of the Western Placer Waste Management Authority, they are also in support, and we have Doug Copel, who's part of CPSC, who can answer any technical questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair and members, Delaney Hunter on behalf of the Solar Energy Industries Association, or SEIA. We're the national trade group for the solar industry and represent more than 1,000 companies across the value chain for solar, including the burgeoning recycling markets up and down the coast and throughout the country. We are proud to support AB 2. We think this is a workable framework that lets the CalRecycle experts help us develop guidelines for end-of-life management plans for the lion's share of solar in California today. It also does, as Priscilla mentioned, create a new fee structure for those panels that are not otherwise covered under a plan or are customer-owned. We think that this is a really good working working plan to ensure that we do start managing panels in a sort of organized and focused way in California. They are being managed today, but probably not in the most efficient way. We think that recycling and pushing forward for recycling makes sure that we don't have them end up in landfills or abandoned in some other fashion around our state. We also think that California can be a model and show the rest of the nation how we can get a recycling program up and going to start managing what we know will be a very robust amount of panels as we go forward and move towards 100% clean renewable energy for our country and our world. We obviously know that there is a little bit of work left to do. We are committed to do that with this committee, with Assemblymember Ward and his team, and our friends at CPSC. We are thrilled to be in this position today in supporting a bill that really does start to sort of pave the way towards recycling for our product. I have Evelyn Butler with me, who is our Vice President of Technical Services, for any technical questions or sort of more in-depth information that's needed by the committee. Thank you.
Okay, let's have folks who want to weigh in and support come on up.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Kara Martinson here on behalf of the Large Scale Solar Association. Would like to echo the comments of my colleague from SEIA. Also, just thank you to the author and committee staff. We know, as was mentioned, there's some work to do ahead, but pleased to be in support today. Thank you.
Kim Stone of Stone Advocacy on behalf of the California Solar and Storage Association in support.
Mr. Chair, Member Brian White with the California, actually Cypress Creek Renewables. We're also in support. Look forward to working with the author, and great bill. Thank you.
Chloe Brown on behalf of Californians Against Waste in support. Thank you.
Good morning, Keela Robinson on behalf of Rethink Waste in support. Thank you.
Jordan Wells with the National Stewardship Action Council. We're in support of the bill getting out of committee today, thanks to the author's commitment to work on toxicity, labeling, reuse, and durability that are currently missing in the bill, as highlighted by the thoughtful analysis. Thank you.
All right. Let's give opportunity for folks who want to raise concerns about the bill. You might be here. Okay, let's go to the phone lines. Moderator, anyone who wants to weigh in on AB 2?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As he stated, please press 1 followed by 0 at this time if you're in support or opposition. And we'll go to line 26. You are open. Line 26, I think you took yourself out of queue. Go ahead and do it again. There you are. Please go ahead, 26.
Yes, please vote yes on AB 2.
And let's give another reminder, if anybody's in support or opposition to AB 2, please press 1, then 0.
And maybe try to identify yourself.
Thank you. And we'll go to line 34.
Plan F, Orange County, support.
And that's it, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. Let's bring it to the committee for questions. So let's go first to Senator Mangiapane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a member with so much respect to you and, as the author of this, and I really understand the intent of this. And a lot of the individuals who spoke said this is a work in progress. There's a lot of work to be done. It's just I'm having a little trouble taking that in, as this is the last policy committee is going to go to. Usually, with so much work to be done, should be done before it gets to the last policy committee. So I just have a lot of questions for this specific bill, Assembly member. The analysis, this is one of the analysis that posed so many questions and that is yet to be missing. And I just want to know if you could just talk a little bit more about specifically what do you think would be added to this bill? Should it come out of committee regarding what goes into the plan? On page 6 of analysis, it asked 9 different things that should be considered to be added. Who's going to develop the plan? I'd just like to hear a little bit more about why up to this point none of that was considered.
Thank you for the question, and I appreciate the broad concern and perspective about the development of this. We have been working and have been reaching out to interested stakeholders and agency as well since the inception of this this winter, and so it's only as of recent that we've gotten more specific feedback and actual agreement and some constructive engagement that's going to be able to address some of these final points. This bill, of course, has developed through the Assembly as well, making it over here to the Senate, and so I really appreciate the even more thoughtful and close study that committee staff has been able to afford to get all these details right. And knowing that some of these are in motion, we're very hopeful. Two things. One, should this move forward here today, I do want to state at the outset that it is my commitment to work very closely with the chair that any final amendments that should satisfy the subject areas that are being worked on right now, and also to your points, were they not acceptable to the chair, that this would not be brought up for a vote, or I would certainly not request that this would be brought up for a vote on the Senate floor, that we would continue to work on this at the time. But I think that with the momentum that's there right now, that we can resolve some of these subject areas and have that worked out over the summer recess. I, again, appreciate the chair's willingness to have this considered for discussion here today. To your question about what goes into the plan, I think there are some great ideas about that the committee analysis defined to those 9 points that you identified that really sort of match the breadth that we would want to be able to see. Right now, we are working and have asked Cal Recycle to, at a very high level, really try to work with industry and others to make sure that we have that latitude to be able to have a planned mechanism that will be able to be appropriate for both small single-family homeowners as well and their responsibilities, but also the large solar scale manufacturers and installers as well. Sort of two different tracks that we're on there right now. I do think that there is some clarity, but I'm happy to further clarify again who is responsible for those plans, because on one hand, the owners are going to contract with somebody who's actually doing the installation. And so we want to make sure not necessarily the manufacturers who could actually be out of state or out of country producing those, but those that are installing them sort of know where this thing is going to go in 10 or 20 years or more at the end of its life. And then for the large scale solar companies that both own and likely install their own facilities, they would retain their own responsibility to be able to have a plan that is specific to their site and the size and scale of their development. We talked about enforcement mechanisms, and you've raised that as well already with me. That is something that Cal Recycle, we're giving latitude to come back with us, knowing that they have always provided very thoughtful ways of defining what that enforcement looks like and what the scope of a penalty and the conditions on that penalty could look like. So we want to really take their existing expertise and experience that they do for other kinds of similar programs, and I look forward to that feedback as well.
Quick follow-up. And talking about the manufacturer, so would you say that each manufacturer would be responsible to develop a plan?
That for the technical assistance.
Senator Menjivar again, Delaney Hunter for SIA. So no, in this case, the plan would be the responsibility of the owner.
The owner.
So in this case, say it's whomever developed, say, the large-scale solar system for selling to a utility or a CCA. So the owner of the asset, who would be operating the asset, would be required to have an end-of-life management plan, because they would be the ones that will be, in most cases, responsible for the decommissioning plan at the end of that project's life. That's usually part of their permit with a local government. So it wouldn't be a manufacturer, it'd be the owner. In this case, say it's EDF Renewables or EDP Renewables or whomever is developing the project and has taken ownership of the panel.
Thank you for your response. And maybe, Mr. Chair, you can clarify for me. We've got an answer here, who would be responsible for developing the plan. But, Mr. Chair, the analysis states that there is no clear language to state who's going to develop the plan. So we got an answer from one of the witnesses. But the analysis is unclear. So I'd like to know if there is current language that states what you just mentioned.
So the language in the bill currently has Cal Recycle working with the industry to develop guidelines. We would I think in the way that we in the energy space tend to work is relying on the experts within the regulatory sphere to sort of help guide how those things come together. So we were expecting that would be part of the guidelines development process at CalRecycle. I think we're open to thinking through whether there needs to be more meat on the bones. I think we've been trying to be very, very careful to not presuppose any ownership model or financing model, because that is pretty fluid in the industry and has led to essentially a whole bunch of different ways you can get solar in California.
Thank you.
Well, and I got to say, I would hope that the question of the ultimate responsibility is still very much up in the air. I understand why the manufacturers would want it to be all on the consumers, but it's not necessarily the best way of doing it to put it all in their laps.
If I may, Senator, I think the concern is that, say somebody sells a panel to a big developer, they don't know where it ends up, right? So if you're buying a whole lot of panels that could be deployed anywhere around the country,
sure.
That's, essentially right, California to say to the owner, you're going to install a solar panel somewhere in California. This is your responsibility if it's going to hit a rooftop, a parking lot, or a plot of dirt in California.
Yeah, I mean, you can make the same argument about plastic waste, right? And yet we've made the producers responsible for the end use, even though it's far harder to track down a piece of plastic out in the economy. So I hear you. I know this is going to be a subject of a lot of negotiation, and I have a lot of comments about this bill, but I do want to hear from the Vice Chair.
Well, first off, I want to say good to see you. So what's the hurry? I just went, nothing against the author. This is something that we do here all the time. It's the process. Like, this bill's really been changed. It's been completely changed since its original form. I have no problem. I want to get to where we need to go. I think I did a battery recycling question bill, and then Ben followed it up with Senator Allen followed it up with a bill to what we're going to do with batteries. We don't really have a lot of these coming offline. They're starting to. The 20-year ones there's probably some, but we're going to figure out what we're going to do with those, because there's no money for those. But anyway, for me, what's the hurry is number one. And so I asked the chair that just on the sidebar, and he said, because CalRecycle won't talk to you. Well, I can't have a hard time believing that. We're going to get this bill out today. It's going to go into law, be signed into law, and it's really not cooked as well as it should be. So my question to you is, what's the hurry? Why can't we work on this and get it right? Because there's a lot of moving pieces in here that there's a lot of detail left out.
Thank you for the question, Senator. I think that we have a momentum right now, that we have those experts and those stakeholders at the table right now that are just recently now engaged. Although I will state on the record that we have been trying to get more specific feedback. The bill has improved since its time in the Assembly, but we've taken the feedback, we've answered the questions, we've made those improvements as we have received some of that engagement right now. But that's active engagement. I think all the stakeholders are at the table that can really solve this over the coming month right now. And as you probably well know, if something is paused for another year, then they're going to go probably work on something else right now. It's on the front burner, and I'd like to be able to continue that momentum as well. We know the issues that need to be worked out and resolved with everybody's agreement, and so I think that by a courtesy to be able to move this forward today, that we can get there, but it's always subject to not going to law, but for a final consideration if all these tests have been met. What is the urgency right now, and why not delay it another year? Because California is leading the nation and pumping out additional PV activity, and to be able to send a signal to some of the installers that this is going to be the new framework to be able to go forward is going to be able to capture yet another year's growth on the near term of what they need to do with recycling plans and management plans going forward as well. So I think that the energy, so to speak, is current in the moment, and I think that we should capture that and try to seize that moment to try to get this right, of course, but to also make sure that we're not delaying another year of product that otherwise would not be subject to the new world order here.
Mr. Vice Chair, if you don't mind, Mr. Vice Chair. Well, if you don't mind, let me just. Why don't I jump in and give you my perspective as to how I've been thinking about this, and then we can go back to the discussion. Well, everyone can raise as many concerns as they like, and in fact, if you don't buy the logic of moving forward today, it's acceptable to me to hold this bill in committee. I mean, I think we were going back and forth a lot over this question. I mean, I think this is an area, extended producer responsibility, that I've been very interested in for quite some time. And I guess it's why I'm both excited about the bill, but also a little trepidatious, because I do think that there's a lot of outstanding issues. They were all articulated in the analysis. Having gone through it myself, I also know how hard it can be to negotiate with the agencies and all the different players without deadlines. And part of my thought of giving the Assembly member the opportunity to move to continue working on it was with that in mind, with the caveat, of course, that the bill would come back to EQ, not just the chair, but I want to have all the members fully apprised. And if folks don't feel comfortable with whatever final product you come up with, we're not going to move this year. And there's so many outstanding issues. I mean, I think some of them were articulated by Senator Menjivar. The question of who will develop and implement solar panel stewardship plans, who's at the heart of them, right? I mean, with SB 54, it was everybody's at the table, and there's responsibility, very much on the producer side. How will they be evaluated and updated? What are the policy objectives of these plans? How will the plans and their evaluation and implementation be funded? Of course, a big one. How will the bill be enforced? What guardrails will be added to prioritize green design and recycling and reuse? This could include warranties and labeling for all solar panels in a plan or not. So those are some of them. There's a lot of things that are raised in the analysis. I know this is really important work. We've got a lot of folks from industry that are happy. That's great, and they need to be a really important part of this conversation. But there's also a whole slew of implementation and funding questions that there's going to be pushback from CalRecycle, as you know. There already is. This committee's got opinions. The members have opinions. There's a lot of consumer-facing organizations that are involved in the conversation, and NSAC's here. They were very involved with all of the major extended producer responsibility work that we've done before. Of course, we also have to learn, as we did with the SB 54, from the mistakes of the past. There's a number of EPR programs that the state has passed that have been inadequate, where, quite frankly, we did not put a strong enough program in place. And it actually was arguably set back the broader effort that the authors had I think, originally had set out to solve. So that's one of the many sensitivities at play here with this bill. My thought, members, was with those caveats, with us having control over and weighing in on the negotiation, understanding that this isn't going to move forward without all of these different players, including CalRecycle, signing off, that we give the author the opportunity to do some more work. And yes, quite frankly, I mean, I wouldn't, deadlines are important for the agencies when it comes to getting them to respond and take bills seriously. That being said, there's another argument to be made for holding the bill in committee today. I am willing to let the author go forward to give him some opportunity to work over the summer. But all the issues that you've raised so far in the committee hearing are valid, and everyone's got to make their own decision. But that's where I am coming from. So I'd love to go back to the members, if you want to continue the colloquy. Yep, Mr. Vice Chair.
Well, so if you read the analysis, it's not going to take effect till 2028.
Right.
So, I mean, I prepared to come to either lay off or vote no because I don't think it's cooked, number one. I thought I was just going to get rolled like I normally do, but obviously some other members have some concern. I would like to do it right. I think this is an area where we really do need to do some good work, and there is an opportunity, I think, to get it right, but I think there's a lot of things that, it's hard for me to buy the fact that the agencies aren't going to work. Bull crap. We run a bill, we get it done, they go do it. And if they don't, we'll come back and have a hearing and talk why they're not getting it done. So, I mean, anyway, we tell agencies to do stuff all the time. I mean, and quite frankly, give them too much rein, in my opinion. So, look, if you guys want to move it forward and we can call it back, that's up to you. I'm going to lay off today. I think this is an area where we really need to do good work. Of course, all the proponents are in here, but there's still the devil's in the details of how it actually happens. And are we getting enough? What's the structure going to look like? What about what's in these things? How do we need to handle that? I think that's something that's kind of vague in here too.
Absolutely. Listen, there's no question it's not cooked today. My only, what gives me comfort with my position is that it will not move forward if it doesn't get cooked. right? So it will have to be fully cooked for it to move forward. But once again, your points are well taken, Senator Menjivar.
Mr. Chair, would we confirming 100%? It would come back. You would call it back.
Yes, it absolutely will come back. The challenge, of course, always is when you bring it back. So if it's either it's a 2-year bill in which we'll have more opportunity to do amendments. If it does happen, if somehow they're able to strike a major deal by the end of this year, this legislative year, it would come back. And of course, you can't take amendments in committee at that point. Now that's the reason why very engaged. If they're getting close to a deal, very engaged dialogue with the members. I would especially say the three of us, given the interest that's here, is going to have to be absolutely critical on the part of the author's office if he's going to want to have a chance of getting a positive vote out of EQ. Yeah.
So how Republicans get this option is they say, if we hope make it a 2-year bill, we'll come back in January and get it done. And then usually nothing happens in January for us, but I think it might happen here.
Right. I mean,
it's really 5 months. I mean, from September to January is 4 months, right?
The idea, it's a tough negotiation they're going to have to engage in. And, I don't know that anyone knows whether they'll be able to land something substantive. From my perspective, I wanted to give the author the opportunity to take the next month to really dig in and work hard. But as I say, it's up to the committee, and I certainly would respect a different, if folks are not comfortable with that plan on the committee, then that's fine too. So anyway, why don't you? We don't have a quorum yet, which is maybe. Good, because it kind of punts the question a little further. Do you want to give us your latest and greatest pitch as to why we ought to give you this opportunity? And we'll see where things go this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'll just really echo the comments that you made as well. I think that there is good momentum of all the necessary stakeholders that can help us to answer these questions. I deeply appreciate the committee staff's hard analysis on this, because these are important questions that, with that sort of second house level of detail that we want to afford to be able to develop policy in the most responsible manner, just came to light over the last month about specifically what do we need to make this the best bill that it should be, especially based on a lot of our past experience developing similar areas of legislation. So all the pieces are right in front of us. All the stakeholders are actively engaged in trying to make this right. I just don't want to lose that momentum. And so again, for another time to underscore my commitment to make sure that we will stay engaged with the chair and all committee members to make sure that these questions are satisfied. We have the menu of what needs to be done. We are working on it. We will get this done, and I would just appreciate any courtesy to be able to afford to be able to get that done, because the momentum is in front of us right now. If it doesn't get done, it gets held. But this is how I spend my summer recesses, to make sure that we are ready to go for that last conversation. And would respectfully at the time request your aye vote.
Thank you. Okay. So I think what I'll do is I'll fill in Senator Gonzalez and you can do the same as well. She hasn't been here you were watching. Okay. Are you willing to move the bill under the terms that we were discussing? Well, so let's discuss. We'll talk about it. Yeah. Mr. Vice Chair, sure. Yeah.
So has the
we have to establish quorum first, yeah.
Has the Integrated Waste Management, have you been meeting with them? Have you been meeting with electronic waste folks? Or no?
I'm going to ask our sponsor to come up here and confirm that.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. We have been talking with, or if you were talking about the electronic waste recyclers, yes, we have been in contact with several of them. We're talking more about what's in 1238, which is some restrictions they have on actually processing these panels in the state. So they've been really more focused on that. They're very receptive of this, especially for the expansion of the e-waste program, because that's going to allow funding to start flowing in to get the panels, panels that are orphaned panels, the ones that are being left at HHW facilities, left out on the streets. Those are the ones with no funding. Nobody's going to want to process them. And so that's where this comes in, is it helps that first part of the bill, certainly helps that part, which is get the funding flowing for those panels. So yes, we've been in talk with some of the waste processors, and then also those collection sites as well, because a lot of the landfills and transfer stations actually receive these things, or their customers want them to receive them, and they actually can't because they really don't have any way to take them in.
And you're with who?
I'm sorry. I'm Doug Cobold. I'm the Executive Director for the California Product Stewardship Council.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And let me just say, I mean, to add to the complication of your negotiation, there is an open question about who should be paying that fee, right? Should that be on the consumer, or the producer? So, there will be a kind of a consumer side pushback on some of the things that are being proposed right now as a part of that negotiation. So just want to warn.
Yeah, no, I understand that, Senator. And fortunately, this is like Priscilla mentioned, that it's only 10 to 15% of the actual stream out there that would be subject to the visible fee and the expansion of the e-waste program. That other significant portion is what's left under the plans, because it's the utility-owned, the PPA-owned panels, not the customer-owned.
Okay. All right. Why don't we thank you. Thank you, Assembly Member. Let's move on to the next bill.
That's good.
But very much appreciate your work on this incredibly important area. And I think the only reason why, quite frankly, the one thing I can say, I think we all agree that something substantive needs to be done in this space. I mean, all the e-waste issues associated with the rollout and end use of these panels is something that's on everybody's mind. We all know what an important solution solar has been and will be to reaching our climate goals, and that involves a lot of solar panels. And we got to make sure that we're taking care of these panels in a responsible manner and at the end of life. So this is vitally important work, and if anything, we all want to make sure it's done right.
Thank you. I agree.
So,
and I appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it.